Hi everyone, Chris Natzke here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week. This week I want to talk about the distinction between anxiety and excitement. You know, as a martial arts master instructor that's been teaching for over 4 decades, I've definitely had an opportunity to help students move through fear and anxiety. You know, whether it's someone coming onto the mat for the first time for their first class, their first belt test, breaking a board with a technique they're not really sure of, or stepping into the sparring ring. Definitely I've seen a number of students face fears and help them move through it. And one of the things I noticed is that those that have the most positive experience are the ones that move through those fears regardless of how big and how impending they are in their lives, because what meets them on the other side is the reward of excitement and exhilaration because they literally stepped into their fears. Now, sometimes things don't turn out the way they wanted to, but just the fact that they made that effort helps build their self-confidence and their self-esteem. Now, many of you listening to this may never be a martial arts student, and you may never have that experience of what it's like to go through that type of fear and anxiety. But each and every one of us has these things happen to us each and every day in our lives. We have things that confront us where it brings up fear, it brings up worry, it brings up anxiety. And one of those that I know is absolutely true is that of public speaking. You know, as I work with clients, I know that sometimes that is one of the most difficult things that they have to deal with. In fact, I've heard it said that in scientific studies, they say that the number one fear among adults is public speaking. Number 2, interestingly enough, is death. So like Jerry Seinfeld says, that means that most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So the idea there, though, is that these fears can be overcome, particularly when we start to reframe them. And I'll quote another scientific study that I use to not only remind myself, but my clients when I'm working with them on dealing with an issue that's causing them fear or anxiety, is that several years ago, scientists did a study and they were doing brain scans. And what they were doing is they were asking subjects what they were feeling in that moment, and then they were noticing how that lit up in the brain. So for instance, if they were happy, it lit up in a certain way. If they were sad, it lit up in another very distinct way. If they were excited, if they were joyous, if they were curious, all different ways that this would like show up in their brain scan. But what they found is there were 2 emotions that lit up in exactly the same way. And they were anxiety and excitement. Anxiety and excitement. You see, what happened is the brain couldn't distinguish between the 2 emotions. The only way it distinguished it was the meaning that subjects were putting to it. So think about that for a moment. Think about the times when you've been experiencing anxiety in your life and maybe it was really just excitement. So how can you, on a regular basis, in an empowering way, transform those feelings of worry and anxiety that you might have into excitement so you can move through the obstacles that are before you? Well, I've got 5 recommendations that I want to share with you that I not only use in my own life, but I also work with my coaching clients on. And the first one is this, is simply breathe it. Yeah, when those anxious feelings come and you're feeling like you're getting out of sorts and maybe your head's spinning because you're so worried or nervous, is get in contact with your breath. And that means breathing through your nose with a deep inhale into your belly. And then when you exhale, exhaling through your mouth, but almost like you're blowing through a straw, like this. Because what that'll do is it'll start to calm you down and begin to clear your mind. So number 1 is breathe it. Number 2 is feel it. Now this to me can sometimes be one of the scariest things as well as what is most counterintuitive. But when you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling anxiety and fear inside of yourself, the best thing you can do is actually feel those feelings. What our natural reaction oftentimes is to ignore them or to suppress those feelings because we don't want to have them there. But what happens is the more we suppress them, the stronger they get. But when you feel them, you actually can tap into the energy and transmute it into something positive. And you do that in the 3rd step, which is reframe it. So now you have this feeling that you're allowing to move through your body, and that's when you say, hey, I'm not anxious, I must be excited. You reframe it. you actually reframe it in the way that you're looking at it. I mean, the first time I did this, I was getting ready to speak in front of the largest group I'd ever spoken to, 2,200 people, and about 1,800 of those were teenagers. Now, if you don't think that'll scare you, right? 1,800 teenagers trying to keep them, their attention for an hour and 15 minutes. But I remember being very nervous when I was backstage, and I said to myself, wow, I must be really excited. And things shifted. And I went out and gave one of the best talks ever. So reframe it. Number four is what I call identify it. Now, what do I mean by that? I think you'd agree that most breakthroughs that we have in our lives don't happen in one magical moment. They usually happen by us taking one courageous step into the next courageous step, into the next courageous step. And so what you do is identify what is your next right move that you're going to make. So for instance, if you're going to be speaking to a group and you're nervous about how it's going to go, maybe you just focus on that first sentence you're going to come out of the gates with. Because when you do that, then pretty soon what's going to happen is you're going to find traction, you're going to find momentum, and it's going to build, and you're going to be able to get through that experience. So identify it. And then finally, the last one is just do it. Just do it. Take action. I know myself, so one of the things that has held me back the most in my life is when I continue to think and ponder what I want my next action step to be. And sometimes it's just about taking that next right move and doing it regardless of all the fear and worry that we have. And it might be just a tiny move that you take, but that one tiny move builds to another and builds to another. Years ago, I had one of my teachers tell me that God meets us at the point of action. Now, regardless of what your spiritual or religious beliefs are, whatever you want to call that, when we begin to move towards something, it's been my experience that the universe just starts to coalesce with us, and we start to get wind behind our sails, and we begin to move to where we want to be. So there you have it, my friends. There's 5 keys to from transforming anxiety into excitement and having beneficial moves in your life. You breathe it, you feel it, you reframe it, you identify it, and then finally you do it. So this week I have a challenge for all of us. When we come upon something that might stir up some fear or anxiety, pause for a moment and move through these 5 steps and see how it can not only transform what's going on inside of you, but the results that you're getting in your life and in your business and in your world. So there you have it, my friends. This has been Chris Natzke with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. As always, if you enjoyed this, please comment, like it, and share. And we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.